On this episode of CEOs You Should Know, we talked with Bob Biesterfeld, CEO of C.H. Robinson Company. You know, they move a lot of goods from point A to point B. If there's something we've been very aware of since the pandemic started is some of the challenges that can be involved in trying to move those goods from point A to point B. And we talked about some of those challenges and how the operation of C.H. Robinson works and some of the great things that C.H. Robinson Company does in our community.
This is Twin Cities CEO You Should Know, powered by iHeartMedia.
Bob Biesterfeld, CEO of C.H. Robinson. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Adam.
Well, tell us a little bit about the company, the history, where the name came from.
So C.H. Robinson was actually founded in 1905, and the C.H. is in remembrance of our founder, Charlie Henry Robinson, and we actually started in 1905, buying and selling potatoes, and the company has certainly evolved a lot over the course of the last 116 years. Without taking you through that whole history, just note today, C.H. Robinson is one of the largest logistics platforms in the world. We work with over 130,000 different companies and matching them up with supply from over 70,000 different providers of things from trucking to air freight to ocean freight. We're the largest provider of truckload services here in North America. We're the largest freight forwarder from China to the U.S., and we really touch customers across a broad spectrum. Our customers tell us that they really value working with Robinson because of our people, because of our technology, because of our global reach and our capabilities and experience really on a broad global basis.
You guys have evolved from the Rolodex. I mean, that would be huge now, that Rolodex, to thankfully everything's on a computer, right?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that the Rolodex was actually part of this industry. When I joined Robinson in 1999, your new employee kit actually included a Rolodex. And so, the speed of change and digital transformation in this industry that's occurred in just the past 23, 24 years has been incredible. But really that pace of change has only accelerated in the past several years. And Robinson has really focused on leading that digital transformation of the supply chain industry. And today, things that took hours to complete, we're completing using artificial intelligence and data science and really accelerating the pace of commerce.
All right, well, let's accelerate a little bit through your career from new employee, getting that new employee kit to you've been CEO for a few years now. You've been an executive within divisions of C.H. Robinson since I think it was 1999. Why are you still there? Why is it such a great place to work?
When I walked through the front doors of our Eden Prairie office on my first day at C.H. Robinson in June of 1999, what I observed was just this incredible culture, and that culture was grounded in people. And even though the supply chain has continued to transform and become more digital, it was that culture that I experienced that first day, and the people that were so focused on innovation and customer centricity and solving really complex problems. That's what brought me into the organization, and that's what's kept me here, for the past several years. Internally, we talk about our values, and our values really lead the organization. We refer to them as our EDGE values, and that stands for, first and foremost, evolving constantly. And so we're constantly working to evolve as with our own mindsets, with the company as a whole, and really focus on that evolution. The D in that EDGE value stands for delivering excellence, and it really reinforces that customer centricity and the quality that we strive for every day and the continuous improvement mindset. That G is all about growing together, right? Ensuring that we've got an inclusive organization, that we're learning from each other, and that we as an organization are growing every day. And the E in our EDGE values represents embracing integrity, and just knowing that when faced with challenges, we're going to really default to doing the right thing every time, and really ensuring that when we make our word to a customer or to a provider, that word means something, and that we're operating with integrity every day.
We're talking with Bob Biesterfeld, CEO of C.H. Robinson. How do you face those challenges? What do you do?
Yeah, supply chains are extremely complex, and they're global in nature and extremely fluid, and it's been obvious probably at no time more so than over the course of the last couple of years as we've experienced so much disruption on a global basis. Our teams are constantly faced with choices that they need to make. Do they maximize a short-term result, or do they really stay focused on the long term for the betterment of all of our stakeholders? And so we really talk about, managing relationships for the long term, thinking about all of the stakeholders involved in our organization. Some companies will talk about the most important stakeholder being the shareholder, and clearly the shareholder is a critical stakeholder for us, but we really want to make sure that we're honoring our employees, our communities, our investors, as well as, the customers that we work with every day, and trying to keep that right balance. And we think by making those decisions, we'll create the greatest value for our shareholders longer term.
We talked about that you're one of the largest logistics companies in the entire world, and I'm sure that we've all been touched by your company, by C.H. Robinson, in some way. I don't know if you can mention client names or supplier names, but can you just talk a little bit more about how C.H. Robinson touches our lives?
Yeah, we're kind of one of these companies that operates in the background. We are a non-asset based company, and that's something that probably hasn't come out. Oftentimes when I explain to people what we do, they say, "Oh yeah, I see your trucks on the road all the time." And the truth is we don't actually have any trucks, right? But we move more truckload freight than anybody else in the world. And so chances are, if you're buying something at a supermarket or a discount store, or going to pick up a new car battery, or maybe even a case of beer, dare I say, or a case of soda, there's a pretty good chance that C.H. Robinson has delivered that. So, a couple of stats that I think are interesting. Every year we'll move over 600 million pounds of candy. That's enough for every single American to have a bag with more than 1.5 pounds of treats. Every year we'll coordinate shipping roughly 4 billion cans and bottles of beer. And I guess if you were to empty all those out into Olympic-sized swimming pools, it would fill about 560 of them. I don't know why you'd waste all that good beer. But the amount of paper that we move during the holidays could wrap 140 billion presents. So, it gives you some ideas of the size and scope of Robinson and how we're impacting people. Through the pandemic, as at the onset of the pandemic, when the world was in short supply of personal protective equipment, Robinson was there, right? We were creating supply chains to import that on behalf of our customers, on behalf of state governments, to help keep people safe. When toilet paper couldn't be found anywhere, we were talking to the retailers and the manufacturers to ensure that we could keep supply chains moving there. And so there's all sorts of anecdotes that I could share when we've got people in time of need, like hurricanes. Robinson's typically the first company to respond there, to just the everyday things that we use every single day.
Thank you for the toilet paper for solving that. I'm down to 6 jumbo packs. I've got a copy of your mission statement here. C.H. Robinson's mission statement: our people, processes, and technology improve the world's transportation and supply chains, delivering exceptional value to our customers and suppliers. Can you talk a little bit more about that mission and how it aligns with the overall picture?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot to unpack in that mission statement, and maybe I'll take it just kind of chunk by chunk. Sure. if we could. And the first is just around that concept of people, process, and technology, and that's really been part of our core, service for as long as I've been here. And, there's a lot of talk in supply chain about technology, but really our experience is that technology alone can't solve the complexities of, everything from air, ocean, customs, surface transportation, across multiple industries. So while we think we've got great technology that our customers love, it's really about the people, right? Us having the people that our customers can rely on, us having the people that are dedicated to ensuring that the work gets done. And so it's that combination of people and technology with a strong global process that we think is a competitive differentiator for us. And we continue to invest in all three of those areas. From there you talk about, the world, and obviously the supply chain is even more global today than it's ever been in the past. And so we really focus on ensuring that we've got those capabilities on a broad global basis, having experts in market, knowing that we've got people on the ground in China, that, as an example, that can manage inland transportation and move that product most efficiently to the port so that we can bring it, into the U.S. So having that representation across the world is critical to our mission. And then, the exceptional value piece is we live in kind of a two-sided marketplace. And I've said for a long time that we need to create value both forward and back. And what I mean by that is, our model, if you think about it in the simplest sense, is kind of like a flywheel. Customers do business with Robinson for all the reasons we've talked about, but ultimately we bring to them this aggregated capacity, this long tail of carriers that they wouldn't otherwise be able to access themselves. So we have to create that value for those customers in order to attract them to the flywheel. On the other side of that, we have to create value for those carriers, right? And we do that through aggregating all those different customers. We do that through our people, process, and technology, because the more participants we can get in this two-sided marketplace, the more effective solutions that we can create for all of them. So, people, process, and technology across the world, with a focus on creating exceptional value. It's just what we live every day.
The phrase supply chain disruption, we touched on this a little bit. If you said this a couple of years ago, supply chain disruption, you would have sounded really smart at a cocktail party. Now it's been on the news. Unfortunately, companies like C.H. Robinson have helped really reduce or eliminate a lot of supply chain disruption. But do you have any specific examples of things that you were able to do to solve those issues?
I feel like I spent the first 21 years at Robinson trying to explain to people what supply chain was and what we did. In the last 2 years, we've been the topic of every dinner party that I've been to, and also the being blamed for everything that's happened. I was at an event the other day and something was delayed, and they said, well, there's issues with the supply chain. I said, yeah, I read something about that. But, I just think about the drastic change that's happened in all of our lives in the past couple of years. I mean, take yourself back to, January 2020, right? You get up in the morning, you go to the gym, then you go to the office because you're going to be there, right, all 5 days that week. And then likely you go out to a restaurant with maybe some pals or some workmates, and you have lunch. Maybe at the way home you stop at Target or Cub Foods for your groceries, and on goes your evening. And now fast forward to today, it's like you get up in the morning, you jump on your Peloton, you go into your home office on the you pull up the laptop and the 2 computer monitors that you've got in your house that you didn't have 18 months ago. You're on your cell phone. You Grubhub your lunch in. And then you do maybe a click and collect at Target tonight because you've already pre-ordered all of your groceries or whatever else. I mean, all of those changes in our consumer lives in the past 2 years have had tremendous impacts on supply chain. Each one of those things has had an impact on supply chain. And so the world in which we live and work has really, really evolved. And so we've had to be really agile to continue to solve for that, over the course of the past couple of years. Specifically, what's been well documented lately around disruption has been, I'll take an example of truck driver shortages. If you go back to the second quarter of last year, kind of call it March through May of 2020, the economy really shut down, right? We had rolling blackouts of industries, of geographies. And when that happened, many truck drivers left the industry. And while we kind of sat and debated whether the recovery was going to be Y-shaped or V-shaped or swoosh-shaped, while we were debating those things, the economy just came back. And it came back really, really strong against a really, really constrained trucking environment. And over the course of the past 5 or 6 quarters, that market has just become tighter and tighter. Pricing has continued to go up and up, and access to capacity has become even more challenging for shippers to gain access to. And so we've done a lot around technology to help those shippers gain access. The one of the top things we heard from shippers was their concerns were around access to markets and the pricing associated with that. So we've built tech to help with that. We've applied people against that, and we're really helping to keep America's supply chains moving every single day.
This topic makes me feel uneasy, as it does a lot of other people. Speaking of truck drivers, where do you see the topic of autonomous trucking going? I mean, is that going to be a reality in the future? And if so, how far from now?
No, I think it's absolutely going to be a reality. We've got companies today that are already doing driver out, fully autonomous driver out testing. There was one that occurred just last month, I think, between Phoenix and Tucson, that was run with no driver in the vehicle. I mean, the technology is fascinating, and how fast it's moved and how quickly it's coming on. I think within the next few years, we're going to start to see real live autonomous trucks on the road, level 5 autonomy, hauling cargo. We're engaged with virtually all of the companies that are exploring autonomy. But if you think about the world of trucking, there's about today 220,000, somewhere in that area, trucking companies in the U.S. About 95% of the trucking companies in the U.S. have less than 10 trucks. And so it's not going to be the owner-operators or the 10-truck operators that are going to be buying autonomous trucks. It's going to be the largest fleets, and it will initially represent a very, very small percentage of the overall trucking fleet in America, which is about just over 1 million trucks. And so it'll be a thing. It'll start to come online here, I guess, in the next few years. But ultimately, trucking is driven by, no pun intended, truck drivers. And I don't think it's going to solve for the shortage that we have there. The estimates are that we'll need to hire somewhere in the area of 1 million new truck drivers in the next decade just to keep pace with the demand that exists in the marketplace today. And when you've got a backdrop of really low workforce participation rates, virtually zero population growth, thinking about how we find all those drivers is going to be a challenge for all of us to solve.
Is there a category, do you think, that has suffered the most with whether it's the truck driver shortage or just supply chain issues?
I think it's been pretty broad-based in terms of the impacts. I will say, I think the supply chain issues of the past couple of years have probably had an outsized impact on smaller businesses because they simply haven't had the ability to do what some really big companies have been able to do that import. A small business isn't going to be able to go out and rent their own ship, to bring things from Shenzhen to Long Beach, right? Whereas some other large companies are. But that's part of where Robinson comes in, is we help those smaller businesses to, leverage the scale that we bring to bear to get them access to markets that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. But I do think that, these supply chain disruptions have had an outside impact broadly on smaller Main Street businesses.
How are things in Long Beach now? Are things still backed up there, or are things moving along?
The administration has done a nice job of taking steps to open up the port of Long Beach for 24 hours, which is an improvement. But I think that that's kind of the equivalent of opening the top of a funnel and making it much wider without really reducing the constraints that occur, kind of towards the bottom of the funnel, which, in essence, doesn't really help the fluidity of the market or the speed in which product is moving. We've still got about 100 ships that are either anchored in the harbor or deep water anchored, or what we would call slow steaming from China. We've got a tremendous backlog of products that are still coming towards the U.S. from Asia that it's going to take us a while to work through. The port being open is helpful, but we still have to solve for the lack of things like chassis, the lack of container, the dislocation of containers, the lack of available truck drivers. And even the labor at the distribution centers and where that product is being delivered to, because there's this lack of labor, turn times are longer, and that just makes the supply chain less efficient. So I think we've got some work to do to really work through the backlogs in order to get to whatever a new normal looks like.
Let me ask you about one more specific thing, and that's the chips for automakers. Do you guys transport any of those, and do you see that issue being solved anytime soon?
We don't do a lot of transportation directly of chips, but we certainly work across the automotive industry in several different areas, and that continues to be a challenge. In terms of how quickly that moves through, I probably wouldn't be the best person to answer that, but I can give you a real live example of the impact of it, and that is, there's all this demand for trucking services in the U.S., and one of the ways you solve for demand is by adding trucks, right? I mean, you either add trucks or drivers or hopefully one of each. And there's been a tremendous amount of ordering of new Class 8 semi-trucks over the course of the past several quarters. But today, the time from ordering that truck to taking delivery of that truck is about 15 months. And some of that is driven by, things like chip shortages and just the ability for manufacturers to be able to keep pace with the demand.
We're talking to Bob Biesterfeld, CEO of C.H. Robinson. They move products and supplies all over the country and all around the world. We talked a little bit about the future in general, but Bob, where do you see the future going for C.H. Robinson in 2022 and beyond?
Our focus is always really, whether it's talking about, the market or our technology, or you can kind of insert any of those. And our focus is really on working backwards from our customers, right? What are the problems that they're trying to solve for? What are the critical things that they need to help in the supply chain? And so this year, I mentioned before, I think it was about, access to capacity, it was about pricing and sustainability. And I expect that those three things will continue to carry forward into 2022. We don't see the market conditions being markedly different. And so, we'll continue to invest in those areas to help our customers to navigate the complexities of the global supply chain as we see it in 22.
Speaking of investment, I'm told you're putting $1 billion into technology, and I mean, obviously you guys have to be technology driven. I think we already talked about that. But why specifically is that so important to C.H. Robinson?
We have a belief that the supply chain will continue to become more and more digital in nature. And we are very committed to being kind of a digital first company, right? And ensuring that we have, the ability to solve our customers' problems in ways that are even more efficient. We want to provide access to our customers and to our carriers to the most frictionless environment that we can that, leverages advanced algorithms and data science and artificial intelligence, because we believe that, again, if I go back to my flywheel analogy, the faster we can get that flywheel to move, the more friction we can take out of the transactions, the more predictive that we can be about impacts of decisions that are made in the supply chain. It'll really accelerate the value that we're able to create for our customers. And so again, I just go to that mindset of, starting with the customer in mind, working backwards from from what they need and trying to create the technology and the processes that they create the tech that they love, and then support that with the processes and the people that are experts. We think that that's a competitive differentiator for us, and it's the best way to create value for our stakeholders.
Well, I think about a lot of consumer-facing brands, and a lot of times there's an app. Is that something that can be done in your industry, an app?
Yeah, we've got one of the most, if you think about the app example, we have one of the most used carrier apps in the industry, Navisphere Carrier, Navisphere Driver. We've got tens of thousands of carriers that use these every single day. They do it to plan their routes. They do it to, book freight by clicking a button. They find a load where they want to go. They click a button. They're able to automatically assign themselves to that load. They're able to, search for other loads. That's the main use of the carrier app. But, other products that we've developed and launched, I mentioned sustainability earlier, huge focus within the global supply chain on sustainability. And so with our incubator, what we call Robinson Labs, we worked with customers to create a product called Emissions IQ. And Emissions IQ is something that our customers can kind of self-manage, and they can, report on their Scope 3 emissions. We work with them from a consulting perspective to identify areas in their supply chain where they can take emissions out. And, many of us are making commitments to, whether it be a carbon neutral or a less carbon future. We want to provide the tools to our shippers to help them accomplish that.
You're a Minnesota company, and you're also passionate about supporting the communities where your employees live and work. I know you have something like 15,000 employees working for C.H. Robinson all around the world. Can you give me a few examples of how they give back?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we might have 16 or 17,000 employees now. Oh. But the great thing about Robinson, there's a lot of great things about Robinson. I mentioned the first day when I walked in the door here in June of 1999. I've had the opportunity in the past 23 years to walk into a lot of front doors at Robinson. We've got 200 and some offices across the globe where those 16,000 people are distributed. And the interesting thing, or the unique thing about our culture, is it's uniquely Robinson in every one of those offices you walk into, whether it's walking into Mumbai, whether it's walking into, Shenzhen or Amsterdam or Madison, Wisconsin. You can tell you're in a Robinson office because of the values that I talked about, those edge values. They come through every single time. And a big part of that is giving back to the communities in which we work and serve. And that looks a little bit different, depending on what part of the country, depending on what part of the world you're in. But our foundation is connected across the whole. I mean, our employees have given to thousands of nonprofits last year for those nonprofits that are most important to them locally. And we've got a really strong gift match program to help support that. Our foundation has contributed millions of dollars to causes that matter to our people as well as the communities that we serve. And our people, year in and year out, even through the pandemic, are logging thousands of volunteer hours to again, those things that are important to them locally, and we support it from here corporately. So whether it's, sponsoring the MS 150 and getting a few hundred people out there to ride the bikes, through Minnesota, or if it's doing local Thanksgiving food drives in Phoenix, or, donating PPE in Mumbai. There's just so many different examples of where our local people on the ground are doing things that matter to them and to their communities to really support the Robinson value proposition and the Robinson values.
In that MS 150, do you think you could get the bikes to transport some cargo, perhaps, maybe?
I was actually kind of hoping for the autonomous bike so that I might be able to do it at some point. But yeah, we'll work on both of those.
Well, that's fantastic. And thanks for everything you do in the community, not just here in Minnesota, but all over the world. What else would you like the Twin Cities and beyond, everybody, to know about C.H. Robinson?
I think 2021 has been the year of the supply chain, and I guess I'd like everyone that's listening to know that we're here to support anything that we can do to help shippers and customers navigate the global supply chain. It's what we do every day. Our people are passionate to solve complex supply chain problems. And just know that, we are so proud to call Minnesota and Minneapolis, Eden Prairie home. We're committed to continuing to give back to this community in meaningful and important ways. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today.
Well, give me your website. And if you're on social media, where can we find you?
Yeah, www.chrobinson.com. You can find me at BiesRob1 at Twitter, BIESROB1 at Twitter.
Bob Biesterfeld from C.H. Robinson, thanks so much for being on with us today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
That was Twin Cities CEO You Should Know, powered by iHeartMedia.